We're gonna practice our bow and arrow choke from the back. But in a very specific way, it's my favorite way to set it up. And it comes from, you gotta kind of trick your partner into this. We got our partner's back. Whenever you take your partner's back, 2 hooks, we have a seatbelt grip and a head trap. Meaning my head is trapping my partner's head between my choking arm and my head. I do not want to ever be like this. His head is not in between my choking arm and my head. We want to be on opposite sides. And when I get here, I glue myself just for discipline. You can take any part of your head, either your chin or I like to even take my eyebrow and I glue it to their head, their shoulder. If I can stay attached with my head and just keep good chest to back connection, it's going to be hard for him to separate and start to turn. The more loose and relaxed you are, the more likely he's going to be able to slip his head out or start to turn. So when you take your partner's back, stay nice and close. And there's different ways to lock your hands. Right now, I just have the quickest. I call this like the quick connect grip. It's always the hand underneath on top. So the underhook arm on top of the choking hand. Reason is if I'm here, Dave grabs that top hand, he has my choking hand. When I go here, he grabs my top hand. My choking hand can still look for a grip. So always hand on underneath, on top. Now we're here. Usually we try to take them to our favorite side. This is the best side for attacking. This is opposite of the choking arm. The reason is because I have chokes, I have triangles, and I have arm locks all from this side. We're going to attack from this side today. So this is the side that I actually don't really favor for attacking, but on this side we have a really strong attack is the one we're going to do today, the bow and arrow choke. If I'm over here, here's how I like to set it up. I'm going to open that lapel and get a grip right near the collarbone. And now guys, what I'm going to do is once I get the collar, I'm going to actually let my partner out. So I kind of loosen that bottom hook and I let him think he's about to escape. When he escapes those hips, my foot comes over the top, and then I'm going to start to come up to my knee. Let's turn a little bit, Dave. Very important thing happens as I start to come up, guys. I have to sink in the choke. So what I'm going to do is I start coming up, but I'm going to come up on my elbow, and I'm going to tuck, tuck, tuck to his spine right between his shoulder blades with my elbow. This is what it looks like. I start to come up, 1, 2, 3. You guys see that? I'm walking my elbow under his head and back, and then I'm tucking the elbow to his shoulder blades. This is gonna make it to where it's hard for him to escape this choke later. If I leave my elbow up, eventually he can slip his head out. So put your head back in. On our way up, we have to make sure that we make this choke hard to slip. So I come up on my elbow, and I go 1, 2, 3. And now the elbow is in between his shoulder blades. I now finish my way up, and I put my elbow on my thigh. It's choking the life out of him right now, isn't it, Dave? I'm gonna loosen it up just for Dave's sake. But now we're here and we're ready to start trying to strangle the person. There's a few different ways we could do it. I'll just go through a couple. One, if I karate chop behind his head and I start to extend, I can get the choke. Second, I reach for the pants. I posture, I get the choke. The best one, the most controlled and the most force I can get out of it is if I tuck my leg under his back, sit to my butt, rock to the other hip. As soon as my leg clears, I lock it around the shoulder. From here, I'm extending and pulling, and I get the tap. There's other ways, but stick with those at first. Now, very important, you can stay on your side. Very important thing to add in at the end of the choke, the way I'm choking. My hand is gonna do an articulation like this. You guys see that sideways articulation of my wrist? Whenever we get this choke, my blade of my wrist has to be against his neck the whole time. So if you grab and you let your wrist bend like this, it's not gonna be a good choke. We have to go thumb up so that the blade is right in the side of the neck. As I start to extend my arm to finish the choke, my wrist is doing that. Does that make sense? Watch me do that. So as I extend, here comes the wrist articulation. You guys see it? So when you're in the choke, you're going to extend your arm, raise up, and then here comes the wrist. That's the last bit of leverage that you're going to need to actually finish somebody whenever you're choking. If you just pull, sometimes people just, look, I'm lifting his head. That's not what we want. I'm pulling the gi around his neck. Does that make sense? So add that in as your choke. So to review, we're starting here. You can go ahead if you want, when you get your seatbelt, lock your grip, fall to the choking arm side. Let your hook feel loose so he's like, ooh, easy escape. Before you come up, throw your foot across the waist, come up on your elbow, tuck, tuck, tuck. It's really tight right now. I start to come up, stand behind the shoulder blades. I like to shelf my elbow on top of my thigh. And from here, I can start to 1, 2, 3. If you want to be rude to your friends, put your leg behind their head. In a couple different ways. Those are all, you can add those in if you like. Usually unnecessary. The first 3 are most likely ones that you're going to use. And just remember, I want you to practice whatever version you get to. Go ahead and hop out. Start choking and make sure you're doing that wrist articulation. Make sure you're adding that little wrist, because if you don't do that, you're missing the last little bit of leverage that you'll need in a real fight. Does that make sense? Shot, ready? 1, 2.